Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Dr. Ahmed Jani. With me today, alhamdulillah, is Dr. Ahmed Ghanem and Rex Nazarko. Welcome to Actual Intelligence, our show that's working on discussing the issues of the day, but also in the context of the greater Muslim world. Obviously, over the past 2 to 3 weeks, the lead story in the Muslim world and impacting Muslims really across the globe, and specifically a sector of the Muslim community, the Syrian American, the Syrian European, as well as the Syrians themselves, is the fall of the Bashar al-Assad regime and the subsequent outcome of that fall. And the events have been remarkable in the sense that the initial news when Assad had left, everybody was discussing that Syria is going to fall into another civil war, and that there's going to be conflict, and there's going to be retribution killings. We're now approaching the second week, and there's been remarkable peace. And I think one of the great highlights of what happened is yesterday with news coverage discussing the flight of a commercial flight from Damascus airport, leaving and landing in Aleppo airport, the first internal domestic flight in Syria. And I thought it was very symbolic that the concept of Syria as a stable country and the optimism that many people have that Syria will remain stable was symbolized by that flight. Ahmed, Jani, in looking in the past 10 to 12 days, and looking at it, not only the concept from the Syrians that you know, but also the larger community that you know, how have you found that transition and the mood as it's been reflected?
Yeah, the transition is amazing, especially given all this changing that's happening in just few days. So, for example, on the American front, and if you're talking about American foreign policy, now the American administration is talking with someone that was 10 days ago was one of the most wanted people to the United States. They put $10 million in his head, and now they are talking with him. And I think they haven't even got all their ducks in order, because he's still on one of the websites that's still as a wanted terrorist for the United States. And on the FBI side, they took the page down. And so I think that the American administration is still struggling to find a way to deal with the situation. We've seen what Trump have said when he came out, and he was said in his way that probably will talk with Turkey. Probably Turkey will be the major player in that. He painted a good picture for us. Like, he didn't come out and say, hey, this is a terrorist state or there'll be a lot of problems. He said, this is a good thing. Bashar was a bad person. There is a change happening. We know the main players that they're gonna talk with, which is in politics, in foreign politics. That's good that you know exactly who you're gonna talk with. And we know that the relationship between Erdogan and Trump is a good relationship. It's built over years and years. So I think from the American front, I think it's going to the right direction. In the Arab world, there is people are not sure what's happening, because it's different from one country to another. For example, Egypt, my home country, the Egyptian government is talking about how dangerous this change is, because they are afraid that the change that happened in Syria will happen in Egypt. In other countries like Jordan and other Gulf area, we see the discrepancy between the government and the people. So all the Arab population, the 300 million people, are very happy with what happened in Syria. But the governments, which will play a major role, especially the Gulf government and the Egyptian government, all that will play a major role, because I think it's beyond Syria. They think what happened in Syria can also happen in Libya. Because Libya had the same major player, had the same civil war, and also the presence of Russia is one of the reasons that Libya is what is Libya right now. So Russia is, if Russia will leave as they left in Syria and give Turkey the green light to make changes, I think we can see a major change in Libya too. And that will be real threat to the Arab countries and the dictators in the Middle East.
Oh, and you know, speaking on the subject of Turkey, because obviously, Rex, you're Albanian, right? Oh, yeah. So obviously Albanian American. You're also married to a Syrian. But I mean, so you have this reflection on the joy there in Syria. Also, you know, you understand the Turkish influence, as we were talking about, like Turkey and Libya, Turkey and Syria, Turkey and Albania. How do you feel that? How do you feel that the idea of this kind of this kind of new trend that's going on, I think, in the Muslim world, kind of almost reuniting with Turkey or reincorporating with a lot of what Turkey has to offer. So where do you think this is going to go?
So I think I'm gonna piggyback off of the point that Dr. Ghanem was making.
Yep.
That I think a domino effect was set in motion with the election of Donald Trump. I think the Turks were in a way banking on the election of Donald Trump to put all of this in motion. And that's not necessarily saying that they were solely the only ones responsible behind the success of the advance in Syria. I think their scope was probably a lot more limited. They didn't expect this kind of advance. But the incoming Trump administration trusts Turkey as a regional partner and sort of as a regional manager, especially with the isolationist policies and the America First mindset that the Trump administration is coming in. They really don't want foreign involvement as much anymore. They're really trying to focus as much as possible on that domestic front. And when we talk about the diplomacy that's been going on, the diplomatic stability that we've seen around this conversation, not necessarily just Turkey, but also the actors who were on the Assad regime side, Russia and Iran, have come with very minimal statements, which shows you that even the main actors responsible for backing this regime for 13, 14 years realized that this was a sunken cost.
Correct.
There was nothing worth keeping there. And in the long term, I mean, I think that bids well for Syria because it shows that all the parties involved are willing to come to some sort of agreement to ensure the stability of the country. It remains to be seen how this situation will evolve. I think it's relatively dynamic, especially with agitators like Israel in the picture as well. But I think overall there's diplomatic optimism on this front. And even with regards to Syria's territorial integrity as well, we're seeing negotiations underway through the opposition or the new government under HTS with the SDF, the Syrian Defense Forces, the Kurdish fighters. We're seeing negotiations with larger Arab tribes. So I think in the long run, if Syria is left alone, the territorial integrity and stability of the country will be preserved. When it comes to Turkey, Turkey essentially reasserted itself as the main regional player. And I think in a sort of way, and to all those who might have a conspiratorial mindset here, I don't mean it in this way, but with the blessing of the United States. I think this administration really wants a hands-off approach to foreign policy.
And by this, you mean Trump?
Correct.
Yeah,
specifically
right.
the
We're
Trump
not
administration.
talking about,
right.
Because clearly the Biden administration was trying to engage Assad before he could.
Very different approaches to this. But I think with the blessings of the United States and the Trump administration, who wants to cultivate trusted partners to rely on in foreign policy instead of directly having their hands in each place. And I'll mention this because I think the appointment of Richard Grenell, who was one of Trump's community envoys for the Muslim and Arab community, as the guy in charge of special missions, which, by the way, is a new position. This was
what is special
created.
missions? I mean,
So my theory, by the way, is that he appointed Marco Rubio as Secretary of State to appease that wing of the party. But in reality, the special missions guy is going to act as a Secretary of State.
So do they have any defined relationship between the special mission guy and the Secretary of State?
Not really.
Well, because but you know, special envoys have always existed. Right? We've known that they've issued special envoys to the Middle East. They have special envoys to, you know, the Council of Islamic Organizations, special envoys to NATO, etc. So, yeah, I do think it's an intriguing play on record. I think we'll follow up with that in a moment, but I'd like to build up on the idea is sphere of influence. I think the important thing here is, and we've said this before, is that the Tariq Abu Ghazala, who was a guest last week, highlighted the fact that institution building, right? It was basically statues and pictures on the Syrian Assad-controlled side, and in Idlib there was actually infrastructure and economy being built, and that was highlighted the fact that with the earthquake they were able to really build those things. I find the issue of sphere of influence, like you bring up, the concern from the Arab regimes who actually were dealing with this idea of the Arab Spring, because it turns out the Arab Spring is not dead, right? The concepts of freedom and democracy is there. And now you've got the Arab sphere of influence, traditionally through the Gulf states, and now you've got the Turkish sphere of influence, which I find intriguing because of all those states, Turkey's the actual democracy. You know what I'm saying? Look, in fairness, Egypt is a democracy to a degree. There's elections to some extent, right? There is voting in several places. Jordan does have a parliamentary democracy.
But Turkey is a delicate democracy.
That's correct.
It's a 50-50 democracy. So
Correct.
In
Correct.
real...
In the sense that you actually have the potential actual change of power from top to bottom through an electoral process. And I think that's intriguing that the entity, HTS, which I believe is now looking at ways to dissolve itself to integrate to a larger unity, has that mentor. And I think that's what let the world kind of step back. There's actually a player here known. And notice that same mentorship we see in Libya, right? So it's a phenomenal change. In focusing on Syria, and then we'll jump to the United States in a minute here, is that what have you guys seen? Like, I've been impressed. The fact that over the past 5 to 10 days, there's been, like you said, actual negotiation, actual communication, engagement. I thought the Council of Bishops from the Christian community from different groups were actually, maybe not necessarily overall endorsing, but very optimistic and indicating that there's some good relationship, good bridge building going on. And I think that the idea of demilitarization to avoid, for instance, what happened in Lebanon. The hard reality is in Lebanon you had 2 competing armies, and that's very difficult to kind of maintain a national identity. That there's this actual effort that to try to, at least in the 90 days, to come with that conclusion. What are you seeing, Rex? That besides for me that flight, what else are you seeing on the inside of Syria right now that's encouraging?
Well, number one, even from the comments of the Turkish foreign minister, comments of Abu Muhammad Jolani himself, we're seeing that the Syrians are taking a very different approach. There was the worry that Syria would go into a Taliban-style direction. There's this worry about these radical Islamists coming to power and implementing Sharia law. And it's primarily, by the way, a worry expressed by Westerners more than Syrians or Arabs themselves. We're not seeing that. We're seeing that the HTS and the coalition, the government coalition, because HTS is not alone here. There's other opposition groups into this realm, are operating very pragmatically in how they're dealing with Syria. They recognize that the social dynamics of Syria are unique. They recognize the diversity of Syria, and they're speaking into making the diversity of Syria an integral part of the country as well. So they've ensured amnesty for conscripts, for example. They've ensured protections for minorities. So far, it seems like they are taking a very diplomatic, state-building, state-crafting approach. And it remains to be seen what role Islam is going to have in the new government. But they've also spoken about convening a council of experts to draft a new constitution, for example. They've said that the minorities will have an active role in government. And they've also said that Syria will have some form of representative democracy, all of which point to good signs for the future of the government.
And Ahmed, I mean, as somebody who's been involved in governance, right? You ran for office, and seeing what you had to go. What are you seeing also from your side in terms of Syria that's encouraging? I
think the overall picture is positive. We should not ignore the history of Ahmed al-Julani or Ahmed al-Shar'i now. Julani is done because Julani is a name that... so he's rebranding himself. But we cannot ignore his past. Like this guy was part of ISIS. This guy went to Al-Qaeda. So he had some very extreme views before. But again, I think the reality on the ground, that if you bring anyone, doesn't matter if extreme right or extreme left, people with this extreme ideas, and you put them on a position that they have to govern, when they wake up in the morning, they are not thinking about ideology, but they think about how to bring food to people, how to bring diplomacy, how to increase our tourism, and all that will actually will push them more and more to the center. So as much as the United States engage with them, the Europe engage with them, and if all the players in the area engage with this government, they will bring more centrist government, not isolated, because they don't want to be isolated. He wants to be a successful ruler. I think he will run for office. I think maybe he will be the first president after revolution. I think that's his, he deserves that, because he already, that's what happened when you win any fight, you have you can...
I call it the George Washington model.
Exactly. So I think once they and he has a lot to learn too. He's a young person. He came from a background that he never held any office, and now he will be in charge of a country in a very, very tough situation. So he will learn a lot, and with the help of Turkey and other countries, we've seen that Saudi Arabia is changing their position right now.
Correct.
Saudi Arabia is coming also. I think they realize that it's better for us to engage with this. This is the reality. We cannot change that. There is no way that this will change. So let's start with them in a good, in a good force with those people, and we start working with them. And so that's why I see that it will take time, and there is a lot of challenges. I think for me, the main challenge will be shifting from a strict socialist economy to an open market economy, because you have, as any dictatorship, they have all these millions of people on government salaries.
Correct.
It's not really good salaries, but at least that's a source of income for them. Right. If you want to have real economy and real change, you have to reformat the economy, and that will exactly what happened to, for example, to Germany after the Berlin Wall. People were very happy with the revolution, but they had to realize that a lot of challenges will come with that. But if I think the challenge for the Syrian, especially the Syrian people like you that have influence on the American government, to bring to the picture that Syria is too big to fail. We cannot let Syria fail.
Well, and I think this is a great transition point, because now we're looking at American policy.
Yes.
I felt like with the conversation historically, somebody like Ahmed al-Sha'ar, formerly known as Ahmed Jani, it would be like he'd be a persona and a non grata. It's like you pretend like he doesn't exist, but the fact is, the reality is he's there. And so historically, American policy has always been that there's no forgiveness. You can't evolve as a human being. Although ironically, in America, we're all about the underdog. We love the guy that rescue story, right? That's what makes millions of dollars in movies. Is the person who was initially a criminal, but now he's turned into a heroic character.
Yes.
So it's ironic that in American culture,
it's part of
it's part of Americana, right? With American policy now, intriguingly engaging an individual that was otherwise calling a terrorist, really opening up a door which I think allows for greater opportunity across the globe, not just in Syria, but now how can you now engage some of these Muslim groups? Because I think one of the problems in American policy post 9/11 is its inability to find moderates. And because of its immediate branding of extremism, I'm not giving any excuse for anybody who espoused or committed atrocious acts. So that's not, but the point of the matter here is that a person can evolve, can regret. I mean, even Nelson Mandela, in one of his early writings, endorsed terrorism.
Yes.
I mean, that's something he said.
Actually,
right?
he was branded as
He was branded, correct?
Yeah.
So, but even he had to undergo an evolution. It seems we see this in Jolani. Now, as we're moving forward, American policy, as it's looking at Jolani, and in the broader Muslim world, do you think now we can see American policy finding more moderates, now actually understanding that you can either bring people to moderacy or at least nurture the moderates, even in groups you might not otherwise engage, so that way you can gain more global traction?
I think the advantage that you have in the United States that you have a very vibrant Syrian society. You have Syrian doctors, you have Syrian businessmen, you have Syrian intellectuals. I think the American government, especially with Trump coming to office, I think they have to have a committee from Syrian Americans, because they understand both sides. They understand what's good for Syria, they understand what's good for the United States, and they will be the brokers of any deals. They can go there, and I think and I think the Syrian Americans should introduce themselves to the government that we have to be part of this deal, and you have to listen to us. We've been some people like born and raised in Damascus, like Dr. Tariq Abu Ghazala. You're born and raised here in Michigan, so you know both cultures and you know how to help, especially also the resources that need to be done. We have a very successful businessman that can channel a lot of resources, not just from the Syrian American community. We have right now all the Muslim community in the United States are very, very in a good state to help Syria. They want to help Syria. They're willing to help Syria, organizing, like for example, Amin should organize trips to Syria. The Muslim Americans should go and visit Syria after maybe in March or something like that. Open the tourism for the American Muslim community, and then the American people at large, investments coming to the United States. But the most important thing is to understand that this is a culture there is a lot of culture issues that have to be solved through the presence of the Syrian American community working hand to hand with the American administration.
Okay, excellent. And what do you think in terms of, in light with the Syrian American community, but also in terms of the question that, like, can America now change its attitude, like it's extremist or nothing, that find moderates where they actually, let's take Palestine, for example. That's one of the biggest issues is there are a lot of Palestinian moderates, very devoted, very religious. Their rhetoric may seem extreme, but really when you talk to them, very practical, pragmatic individuals that can build a great Palestinian state. But because of this idea of that, khalas, you get branded extreme, or so can we see that change in the?
No, I definitely think so, and I actually want to speak to the figure of Ahmed al-Shar'a or Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, because I think he represents the breakdown or the shattering of this "we don't negotiate with terrorists" policy that America has had on the Muslim world specifically for the last 3 decades. And I'm not saying that as an endorsement of terrorism, right? But it's this blanket labeling of any form of political Islam as terrorist.
Correct.
And I think this figure and this revolution and this group at HTS, right, and America's willingness to be seen still, but we're seeing good signs, to engage with them might represent a general shift towards political attitudes in the Muslim world in general. And it might give the Muslim world some room to breathe and to allow them to determine their own fate, whether that is a secular democracy or whether that is elements of Islamic governance in their countries. People have a right to self-determination, right? And those conversations should be determined by the people, not by foreign powers or else. And I think to Dr. Ghanim's point and to your point, the Syrian American community has a key role to play here. I think the diaspora in general, the Muslim diaspora in general, is perfectly positioned to build bridges and facilitate conversations between the Muslim world and the superpowers of our time, right? Which is important for stability, it's important for progress. And at the end of the day, we don't, look, as human beings, it's not about the geopolitical chess game. All human beings and us as Muslims care about is peace, prosperity, stability of our brothers and sisters abroad, oppressed in Gaza, in Kashmir, in India, in China, wherever they may be. We want the best for them and their livelihoods. That's what we want to ensure, right? The diaspora plays a key role. We're perfectly positioned to build that bridge between these governments and the parties responsible abroad. And I think Syria might be the starting point of that. Syria might be the starting point of a new American attitude in the Middle East, hopefully. And it might be the starting point where the Muslim diaspora is allowed to engage with their home countries and their home ideas with more freedom. Right.
Well, look, the Syrian American community was very involved in developing the Caesar Act. It was very involved in, for instance, some of the TPS modeling that had been subsequent to that. And we saw that even in Europe, right? There's policies in Europe through the European Union granting process where Muslims, who happen to be Syrian, and obviously with Syrians, we're more than just Muslim. There's Christians, there's Jews amongst the Syrian Americans, but as a whole, that suddenly democracy seems to work, right? You can engage, you can talk, you can reach out, and kind of going back to that question. Then, now that you have a special envoy, does that empower somebody like Rick Gannell, that there's a reality now on the ground that we can maybe start really going away from the static, away from the noise, away from the what is it called, what is it, not the punchline, but that line, right, that zinger that they're trying to, that now, okay, let's go deeper, let's delve deeper, that there's something we can do. What do you think?
I think Rick Grenell's appointment as special envoy, especially for dealing with Syria, is a positive, in my opinion. This is someone that the broader Muslim community was actually supporting as a Secretary of State nominee. And there was a multitude of Muslim organizations and leaders who, whether you like Donald Trump or not, whether you like the Republicans or not, that's not the point. The point is, this is the administration. You have to deal with the cards we're
Americans. We get involved in the process.
Correct.
Exactly.
So, and Rick Grenell has been very outspoken about Syria. Actually, it's all public information on his Twitter account, on his X account. You can go and see his track record on speaking about the Syrian revolution and the recent unfoldings. And he's very I think he's a positive sign of the America First movement, of this non-involvement, in foreign wars and in managing foreign governments and in micromanaging, should I say, more than managing foreign governments and institutions. So that role still has to be defined, I think, a lot more properly. It's a new role, as we mentioned. And all President Trump really said is that he's going to be working on some of the world's biggest hotspots, which I assume Syria, the Middle East, and the Muslim world are definitely going to be a part of. So, but it remains to be seen what that dynamic is also going to be seen with Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, who tends to be more hawkish and more neocon. I don't know.
No, you're totally right. But again, what is happening on, like, if you look at the big picture here, you have Trump coming to be a president. He wants to show himself as the one that achieved all that, that the one that created ceasefire in Gaza, the one that stopped the war in Syria and changed the regime in Syria. He wants to take credit of that. That's Trump. He likes to take credit. So let him take credit of that. And while he's taking credit of that, let's focus on shaping the relationship between, because right now this is the most important time right now. How we shape the relationship, not me, but the Syrian Americans like you that's involved with working with administration. If whatever you shape the relationship with the United States right now, this is how the relationship will stay for like 50 years from now. So this is so important right now. And this is what was defined by dictators like in Egypt, in Gulf areas. They are the dictator that shaped the relationship with the United States away from the people. So they made it, okay, we'll do this, you will do that. This is how we work the game. Now it's a totally new game. And I think Trump administration is open for that. So using the relationship with Erdogan, using the pressure you put here on your local officials and also on the State Department, I think that will come. And I think the people in Syria, anyone in Syria from any sect, I don't think they have the time or the capacity to sit now and shape this relation or understand how it works. I think it comes from people, intellectuals. They have the leverage to sit and they have the access to all the think tanks and run a lot of scenarios. What can we do? And then come with like a white paper or something like that and push this to the State Department and say, hey, we need a meeting. This is how we see the relationship between the United States and Syria for the short term and for the long term, and you push all what you have to have this. And if the Syrian Americans with all their Muslims, Christian, Jews, with the back of the Muslim community, were able to do that, I think that will be the best thing we can do for Syria right now.
Yeah,
and I'll speak to that because during the Kosovo War, the Albanian diaspora played a very similar role.
Yep.
There was very little to almost no engagement between the State Department and American institutions and Albanians. Following the start of the Kosovo War, the diaspora took a very active role in shaping U.S. policy in the region, and that's a relationship that continues to this day.
So there's precedence, right?
There's, of course, and this is an Albanian community is not the only one. The Armenian community has done something very similar. The Armenian community has a huge lobbying influence in the United States. I mean, Syrians, Muslims as a supporting factor, I think I agree, have a perfect opportunity to now mold that relationship as people-led.
And also on the grassroots level, like after the Egyptian revolution, we tried to do a lot of things. Like we tried to go to, for example, a lot of the Egyptian revolution was like all over the news and people wanted to be part of it. And I came here and I had a lot of meetings with a lot of people that trying to reach out to me. For example, Boston Fire Department, they talked to me and said, we can help you guys build your fire department in Cairo and stuff like that. But because we had the deep state in Egypt, we could not get anything here or forge this relationship between the small cities. For example, if you do like a relationship between Halab and Detroit, Flint and Damascus, and stuff like that, sister cities, and a lot of people wants to volunteer and go and help. Once you put this on you create this on the grassroots, it will be very hard to break away from this. And you can use this because you don't have a deep state right now. Like when I talked, for example, Boston Fire Department, they wanted to help. I talked to the people in Egypt. They were actually the old guards. The same. They said, no, we don't want to do anything with that. And all these initiatives that started after the Egyptian revolution died because of the deep state. Now you don't have a deep state there. So you have to engage. And I think this is because of the Syrian community is all over the state. So you think in your state, what can you do from your state, from your city? What kind of resources? Who can volunteer and go there? And we can learn from the Jewish community. That's you learn from the Jewish community how we always think about the Jewish community that someone sitting in some place dark and playing in everything. That's not. they are active. They go to the schools. They fly people to Israel.
Yep.
They give them education and stuff like that. The Syrian community has this rare open right now. This rare opportunity right now. As an Egyptian American, I cannot do that right now. As Jordanian American, they cannot do that. But you can do that. So use it and maximize it, and I think that will change a lot.
Yeah.
On the grassroots level and also on the governmental level.
And I think it'll be a launch pad and a model for the rest of the Muslim community and the Muslim world as well.
You know, one of the things that I noticed is that when we were dealing, even the Palestinian issue is important, right? To the Palestinians, obviously, and to the Muslim world. But the intriguing thing is that as Syrian American organizations, there's an organization or there's a network called the American Coalition of Syria. They've been very active between the Syrian American Council, the Syrian Expatriates Task Force, Americans for Free Syria, Kailas PAC, Citizens for Safe and Secure America. There's several organizations that form that coalition. Again, for anybody that didn't get mentioned, please forgive me. It's a big list and it's a short show. But they've been very active. You're right, and each one of them have had offices. Each one has their roles. Intriguing enough, there are no Palestinian offices. If you go to Washington D.C. right now and you try to find Palestinian American organizations, and if there is, please reach out to our show. We'd love to be able to bring you on and
Muslim for
discuss
Palestine.
it. Right?
AMP.
But that's not really right. It's really kind of a Muslim organization about Palestine.
That's right.
It's not. We're talking about Palestinian Americans, right? Try to find the Palestinian American Council, right, or the Palestinian Expatriates Task Force. You're not finding that there. And when I talk to some of my colleagues in the United States, in government and things like that, they tell me, they go, you guys are present, you guys have offices, you provide information, there's literature. And and by the way, for so many of those organizations, they're not just Syrian Americans, right? We have people from all backgrounds that are part of these organizations that meet with these Congress people and meet with the White House and their staff and really work to educate, right? Remember, elected officials are always seeking education. They're actually looking for somebody to keep them informed. They're looking for that expert to reach out to.
Yes.
It's those relationships that nurture what goes on, right? After the fall of Assad, several people reach out to me. They're asking me, what next? What do you think we should do next? And I'm honored that they reached out to trust me. And you connect them to the networks, right? One of the things also is, you learn that you can't be just about you. You can't try to control. You want to make sure that you're networking and you want to network the network and keep that network communicating. Keep what we call it supercharging. I think those are great lessons. I think, at least from the Syrian American side and as it affects the Muslim American community, it really shows you that we are part of the American fabric. There are tools that we can use. Again, as we look beyond, as we look forward, and again, we're talking about President Trump, that I think for the Muslim world and the Muslim community, largely optimistic. Again, there was always this fear. He brought up the Muslim ban, obviously in 2016.
I don't think just the Muslim community, because even the whole dynamics are changing. Even Trump said, he said, I think yesterday he said, when I started the first term, everyone hated me and wanted to impeach me. Now everyone loves me. That's what he said. What happened if I have changed my personality or not? I think the dynamic. You remember what happened in 2016? I think it was shocking to the American public to bring Trump and president in the same sentence. That was new because nobody. Because for so long they told us on the news that he will never be the president and he's like 20 points behind her and stuff like that. And so we shocked. I think people over the shock right now, and people started to say, okay, now there is a reality right now. He is the president. We cannot keep doing the same thing. Before that, like 2016, before he even, before he even been in office, there was a march to impeach him before even taking office. Now it's totally. I think the dynamics is different right now. People wants to get the best of what we can get from him. He's the president for 4 years. Let's deal with this fact. Even if you don't hate Trump, even if you hate Trump, even if you didn't elect him, what can we do? Therefore, the Democratic Party, I think they should be focusing on rebuilding the party after what happened in the election. And for the American public, I think they are optimistic. So it's not just the Muslim community. So I think the lesson that we have to learn from it, we don't have 4 years to waste. We cannot just waste the next 4 years saying Trump is bad, Trump is bad, Trump is bad. If you think Trump is bad, is bad. That's fine. What can you do? And this is what I'm saying, because we're learning from the Egyptian Revolution. When the Egyptian Revolution happened, we did not anticipate that we will be on the same situation that we have right now. we did not capture the moment when that happened. So I'm looking for, not just for the Syrian American, for every American Muslim that's watching right now. What can you do for Syria? What can you do in your local area, in your local events? How can you organize? You have a nation that can be, it's an open for building. They will open for everyone coming with idea, coming with investment, coming with education, and everyone can tap into a lot of resources here that we have in the United States, like other communities, what they're doing. So I think this is the lesson that we have to learn. We don't have time to waste. We have to work as of today.
Gotcha. Excellent.
Completely agree.
What do you think? I mean, in terms of, I think the moral of the story, right, is you can't be against something. You got to be about something.
Yes.
Right. And so how do you see it? How do you see it now playing? Like, again, with this, I don't want to say necessarily great optimism, but I mean, I think that there's something good about the Trump presidency. That there's going to be great engagement. That there's hope.
I mean, geopolitics remains geopolitics.
Right.
So obviously we cannot account for anything, and I don't want these sound bites to be used in the future to incriminate us with something.
Yeah.
But we're speaking in terms of what we're currently seeing and with the limited information we're trying to conduct this analysis. I think, like Dr. Ghanem said, it's really not just the Muslim community. The Latino community feels the same way.
Correct.
The Black community feels the same way. They are dealing with Trump as a situation now, not to stand against, but to work with, to further whatever agenda or cause they may have, right?
Yep.
I mean, this is who holds the power-making decision. This is who holds the cards. You play the game. It's as simple as that. And I think there is definitely cautious optimism about the Trump presidency amongst most people. I think people are very tired overseas, especially with wars, but even here, even us, we're emotionally, psychologically drained of seeing bombardments and deaths and war in our home countries on a daily basis.
Correct.
And be it Muslim or non-Muslim, So I think there's definitely some cautious optimism behind the Trump presidency. I will echo everything that Dr. Ghanem said about Syria as well, and what the role of the Muslim community should be worldwide. I think let's also take a page from the Jewish community here, and this is not an endorsement of Israel in any way, shape, or form. And I also want to emphasize that Syria is for the Syrian people.
Correct.
But
Correct.
As an ummah,
but we're talking about examples.
Right.
I mean,
I will say this: as an ummah, we see parts of the ummah as parts of a body, right?
Yep.
And we feel for each other, we empathize with each other, and we bring each other up when we're down. This is a situation where Syria is coming out of being down. As Muslims, we have a responsibility. As an ummah, we have a responsibility to collectively help Syria and the Syrian people. And taking an example from how the Jewish community behaves with Israel, there's a lot of opportunity for Muslims to rehabilitate Syria here, including investments, including trips and information.
Yep.
And that, by the way, feeds the political activity in the home country, in America as well. When we come for even sending congressional officials on trips on Syria, organizing things of that sort, making them aware of the history of the region, which is deeply connected not just to Syria itself, but the broader Muslim struggle.
Well, and I think Biden has a tremendous opportunity that before he leaves office, he can relax some of these sanctions and restrictions on Syria, then say, hey, look, any Syrian American that has investment, that there would be no concern if they start investing or rebuilding into Syria, allowing for opening up some of the funds and the monies through USAID and some of the other development organizations to say, hey, look, as America, I no longer have that. We're not going to put those restrictions. We're going to give you, just like they gave the open license after the earthquake, even to the Syrian regime, do the same thing. Open it up for 6 months. See what happens. See what develops. I think there's a tremendous opportunity there.
And this is so important. I think it works for the benefits of Europe and all the countries in the region. You talk about geopolitics. There are millions of refugees in Turkey, in Europe, and everywhere that wants to go back in Syria. And they are not going to go back in Syria like this. They have to have opportunities. They have to have work. They have to have homes. They have to have bread. They have to have food. And all that will not happen overnight, especially in a country that's torn by war like that. So Europe has to invest instead of just crying about the refugee problems and they are invading Europe and stuff like that. They are happy to go back to their countries. Just help them do that. Help them with the investment, just like you did. Also, United States Trump does not want to get refugees from Syria or Gaza. That's fine. Don't get them. They want to go there. Just help them to be there and give them the resources that they need to be there in their home country. And also the Arab countries, they want also to, for the refugees, they talk about a lot of refugees. But again, it's, I think for the benefits of everyone in the region, that Syria has to continue and should not fail, because failure of Syria will create way more problems for everyone. So that's one point that I think that will help the Syrian government moving forward, that they know right now that deep down in the politics and whatever people say, what they say, deep down in when they sit in the closed rooms, they said in Europe, hey, we want the Syrian people to go back to Syria, let's just make it functional for them.
I think what's important for European governments and the American government to realize is Syrian people, the Syrians, no matter what culture they come from, backgrounds, ethnicity, etc., they love to build.
Yes.
And when you open up the history books, ancient history books, almost all the civilizations, at some point in time, were in Syria, right? So between Palmyra, Tadmur, you've got Hama, you've got between Halab, all the archaeology is there for a reason, because the people of that region, they love to build. They can rebuild. They built before, they'll build again. And I really think that's a highlight. You've got a culture that's already in that mode. Just let it build and facilitate.
And you've seen that actually in Egypt when they came as refugees, and they ended up having very successful business in Egypt, like
Correct.
a lot of restaurants.
In Albania.
Yep. And in Turkey, like you go to big historic areas in Turkey, and now they have a lot of Syrian restaurants and stuff like. So they, by nature, they are successful people. They don't like to sit and depend on financial aid from anyone. They go and work and create business and create. They need the opportunity. And I think that's not just the Syrian. All the Arab people, they need the opportunity, and we can see it in Syria, and that could be an example for the whole region.
So really, we're looking at this, and to kind of go into our last and final segment as we wrap up this show, is, all right, so what are the lessons? So we're looking at this opportunity to build. The Syrian diaspora is huge. There's probably as many, if not more, Syrians outside of Syria than inside Syria. And that's a lot of that's a big brain trust. Very empowered, between very financially linked and networked. So very capable. They can bring a lot, right?
Yeah.
And now that we're looking at that, and how are we seeing that in terms of the Muslim world as a whole? When we're looking at countries like the Palestinian situation, like Libya, okay, even Egypt, what is it that we can say, hey, look, this is what's been able to work for, and when we're talking about the Syrian situation specifically, and without creating disruption and talking about, but for instance, what can be worked now for Egypt? Like, what are the lessons that we're learning from the Syrians that, even for Egypt, what are institutional structures that if we just improve them, you know what I'm saying, that it's just going to lend its strength, or as we talked, even Tunis, or Libya.
I think the lesson is very clear that if once the foreign powers, once they stop supporting the dictatorship will fail itself, and that what happened in Syria. They kept giving this bloodline to Assad for 14 years. Billions of dollars spent from Iran, from Syria, from Russia, and from other countries just to keep people oppressed. And it did not work. And at the end of the day, you have to work with, imagine that what happened today in Syria happened 14 years ago.
Right.
You would saved hundreds of thousands of lives. You've saved families from being separated and displaced. You've saved hundreds of thousands of refugees. You've saved everything. If they stop supporting Assad at day one and they said, you know what, you either talk with your people or we're not going to support you, they will fail. And that's the same happening. What's happening in Syria?
Which is, by the way, what happened, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And that's exactly what happened when they just said they will fail. And so I think the lesson for any foreign powers that at the end of the day, you're going to deal with people. So you want to deal with them right now, or you want to deal with them after 10 years, after they have all this bad history and killing and bombing and stuff like that. So they don't want to do anything except stop supporting the dictatorship and learn with the people. And this is actually what happened with Obama. When Obama came to office at the beginning, he started this initiative that I'm going to talk with people, that I'm going to stop working with the governments, and he did a lot of initiative. One of the initiative was like the Muslim entrepreneurs and how to encourage the people. Instead of giving money to Mubarak regime or to Assad regime. I'm going to give the money for the entrepreneurs, the Muslim entrepreneurs. He started like that, but definitely he got pushed by the deep state and all this. And he said himself, I changed from being someone that has like all this idealistic to a realistic person. So his shift from idealistic to realistic person, that was actually what happened during the Arab Spring and what we are paying the price for it right now. So I think when and this is again when I'm talking about shaping this, it's too late now to work about Egypt or other countries, but it's not too late to work about Syria. And I want the Syrian intellectuals here in the United States not to be consumed by the small details here and there. What happened? Did Giuliani did that? What happened to this? Because that will consume their energy. Correct. And focus about the big picture, how to build this country and how to shape this relationship moving forward.
And you know, Rex, in the same vein, Albania is a predominantly Muslim country, yes, right? Remarkably democratic, yep, former communist state. You know, and it's had its challenges, right, recently, but somehow the institutions are working. What are we learning also, let's say, from Albania, when, you know, as it moves through? Like, why didn't it become the police state or?
I think actually it's specifically this, that, look, the methods of oppression, I want to begin, that they used throughout the Muslim world were the same.
Yep.
Really. And the communist regime in Albania and the Ba'ath regime in Syria and other parts of the Arab world were socialist entities, right? Entities that were meant to have a top-down control of the economy.
Lots of patronage. It's a patronage.
Correct.
Yep.
So I think the main lesson to take from Albania, the approach that the West took with Albania, that it is not doing in the rest of the Muslim world, is an approach of support. And I know a lot of the tankies will be upset by this idea that Western support is always bad. No, not necessarily. The West has definitely had its flaws in Albania.
Yep.
And I'm not going to justify everything. But the support that they pledged to the Albanian people in terms of economic reconstruction, in terms of trying to integrate them into the European infrastructure, right? And Albania still has a lot of challenges. It's heavily corrupt, but at least Albanians enjoy freedom and they enjoy security. There's economic challenges, but things will be addressed. The recipe is simple, in my opinion. This worked for Albania. I think it'll work for the rest of the Muslim world as well, is if you want stability, you allow freedom. If you want stability, you let people do as they wish to do with their governments. You guide in the right direction, especially in terms of economics, but you have to trust. There's been this idea, you know, that Muslims are brutes, that they can't govern themselves. We don't need the white man's burden, right?
Right.
We don't need this white man's burden to come and civilize us. We're bastions of civilization. You mentioned it earlier. We've been bastions of civilization.
Correct.
For a long time. This idea that Muslims need managers needs to go. And we successfully kind of detached from that here politically. We don't need managers here for our community. And we certainly don't need managers in the forms of dictators abroad. Let the Muslims run their affairs.
Yes.
And then you'll find us great contributors to the economy, the global economy.
And
great
stability.
Places,
Stability.
Correct.
Yeah.
And a great place to invest, to visit and go on vacation.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, and we see this, Turkey booming, Indonesia booming, Malaysia booming. I mean, so many areas of the world that people don't realize. These are largely Muslim areas that do extremely well. And obviously, a lot of people visit the Emirates,
Yes.
right? That's the big. So that when Muslims are kind of left to themselves, they're remarkably capable. You know, as we wrap up the show, any final words that you want to give?
Yeah, I will say this to our community, and I think we've been concluding with this kind of wrap up.
Yeah.
Addressing them specifically, that once again, this is not the time to bicker. This is not the time for hot geopolitical takes. This is not the time to micro-analyze how the situation is going to unfold and who's going to partake. At the end of the day, we trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have optimistic, prophetic outlook towards situations. And if Allah has provided a people with an opportunity to freedom and success, then we pray for the success of the people and we assist the success of those people. Those are my final words.
Ahmed?
Yes, I want to address just the division that was created by a lot of discussions about Syria, which is the division, some division between Sunni and Shia in our community. And again, as Rex said, this is not a matter of Sunni versus Shia. This is a matter of freedom. People will get their free, you know, they want to be free, regardless if you agree with it or you don't agree with it, regardless of who you think done it. There is some people that believe in conspiracy theory that Netanyahu have done anything. That's fine. I mean, we can waste months and months talking about this. The most important thing, we deal with the reality that we have right now. We have a reality right now, regardless of who caused this reality. Let's deal with the reality now, or let's get the best outcome of this reality. Whether you're Sunni, Shi'i, Christian, Muslim, it doesn't matter. We are dealing with the reality. There is a new country. There is a way for every single one to be involved, from the Syrian community to be involved in helping, and even non-Syrian to be involved in helping this new country that will help everyone in the Middle East. You think a successful and functional Syria will not help the Egyptian, will not help the Jordanian, will not help the Saudi, will not help everyone, will help every single one, will not help Lebanon, will help everyone, But let's unite as we united in standing against the genocide in Gaza. Let's unite as a nation, as a Muslim ummah, Muslims and Shia again, in helping the new country regardless of who the government is, the new country of Syria.
Barakallahu feekum, both of you, and I really appreciate both of you. For my final words, final thought, I echo both their sentiments. The reality is the issue for Syria, although it gives me great pride that it's something that affects me directly, it's actually a larger issue for the Muslim world. And I think it's the reason why the Prophet ﷺ has the hadith, Barakallahu Shamina wa Yamanina. May Allah give barakah to both Sham, which represents not just Syria, but Lebanon, Palestine, the areas that are in Israel and Iraq and in Mosul, and Jordan, and so there's a barakah there, and I think that's symbolic that what happens there, the barakah there, when Allah gives barakah to one area, then that barakah spreads to everybody else, right? Barakallahu shaman wa yamanna. The importance that as Syria evolves, if it moves forward, it not only has an impact on itself, but because you can see that they're invariably, wherever you are, wherever in the world, I guarantee you, just down the street, you're going to find somebody who's from Syria, from Bilad al-Sham, and that you can engage. And therefore, that means that's part of the global family. That's part of the global networking. That's part of the global relationship. And so for Muslimin now, this is the opportunity to fulfill the promise of the Prophet ﷺ, that Barakallahu Shamina, that when we help each other, when we help Bilad al-Sham, we're also helping us, we're helping ourselves as the Muslim Ummah. I think the other part of that final thought is that very simple. Conspiracy is the argument for the lazy. It is really the argument for the one who just wants to find an excuse to do something. Yeah. If you really want to be successful, you must understand the institutions, wherever you are, wherever in the world, that you have the resources that you can then engage, and then you must stay involved, stay committed. If you stay committed long enough, change will happen. It's not going to happen the same day. If you're looking at the Sirah Nabawiyah, when the Prophet ﷺ became the Prophet, it took a decade to have 500 believers. And it took another decade to get to 20,000 or 100,000, whatever. But you can see that it takes time, it takes investment. Can you imagine if the Prophet ﷺ, after 1 or 2 years, say, oh, there's a conspiracy against me, Mecca won't let me preach, I'm done. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. But the fact of the matter is, it was commitment, and it wasn't easy. It was not an easy road. No. It was a test upon a test upon a test. And I think we see that in large part now with Syria. The effort that happened in 2010 was actually on the shoulders of people in the 1970s and the 80s and 90s, God rest their souls. It's the 1,000 little actions. There are going to be famous people that you're going to see on TV, on radio shows, and who may get elected. But they stand on the shoulder of giants that you'll never know. Exactly. Hamza, the young man who was killed early on during the out of Dar'a. And
Sharut.
Sharut, the one that was on the shore.
Singer, yeah.
Yep. Then you have also Hakam Spa'i, who was an ambulance driver that was murdered while he was trying. You may not know these heroes, but they're the ones doing something, and in that action, it led to another action. And because people stayed committed, change happens. In the end, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, He is the ultimate authority and power. There is no conspiracy. There is no grand. It's either you put the effort in and you get output out, or you don't, and then you're on the table for everybody else to feast upon you. So, inshallah, with those final words, we look forward to seeing you on our show on Thursday, January 2nd, for the new year. And
what time?
Inshallah, what time?
The time, so people can wait. Like what time? When 9?
We're hoping 8 to 8:30.
Okay.
For our listeners, and I know As you can see, this is an evolving process as we're
Yeah.
learning the structures of our show. We really enjoy the fact that you're following us and continue to send us your input. We'll continue to improve and design the show. But inshallah, 8:30, but could be 9. But we'll be back with you on Thursday, January 2nd, inshallah, celebrating